going straight for the panel. So the panelists may take their place here. New for you, new faces, not backheads, would be Endre on your extreme right. He has launched a very interesting service called Choose European, which is a website with alternative European-based supplier, very user-friendly. And we have Gard here, which is actually running a big organization, which I look forward to hear about your experiences with the alternatives. And the rest of them are known faces. So anyone, just go ahead with your questions. Yeah, please.
Okay. I work. So I work in this. Is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I work in this industry, and this is a topic I do advise all the companies on all the time. And one of the biggest pet peeves I have with well, you guys, advocates for alternatives, is that you kind of gloss over the assumption you're making, because a lot of people say, oh, go EU and then it's good enough. Go with EU companies or similar, and then you're safe, because the risk is China or the risk is America. But we have seen that, for example, UK, so not part of EU as such now, has become rather authoritarian with some of their laws. We have seen, as you mentioned, Switzerland being quite aggressive. And in reality, it doesn't matter who turns off our services and who steals our data or who blocks our access to our data. And I feel like the conversation about how you actually address the risk of European alternatives also being unreliable is a missing link here. Because the way I see it, it is not go with this provider as an alternative. It is, as some of you mentioned, go with something that allows you to move so you have alternatives to go to, because it doesn't matter who you lock yourself into. That's my understanding. But how do you view that? Is it better, maybe, or is it safe or good enough to lock with just, for example, Red Pill Limpro or just Proton? Or is the movability of our services what's the key to our future success?
Everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I can start since you mentioned. I want to. Okay, I think it's an excellent question, and I think we are very quick to jump on the fact that the issues we see in the US are not going to happen here in Europe, and it's a good point. Not only we want to keep it local because we want to have control over the underlying infrastructure, but you're right. If you put your eggs in the basket of a provider, the provider has control, even if it's based in the EU, but you don't have it. As I mentioned, I can only fully agree with you and Thomas. I think a lot of people and organizations are capable of getting the education and making the legwork to organize themselves around open source tools that they can truly control. And I think that's the path to a better internet and a better digital sovereignty in Europe. However, I'm also not naive to the point that I believe everybody will be able to do that. So I think in order to fix on a larger scale, we also need solutions that can address people who do not have, maybe the expertise or maybe the will to do those type of things. And in that sense, I think providers like Proton are, if you will, and my boss is going to kill me for saying that, but a lesser evil. It's not as good for your control as if you had the data itself, but it's still encrypted everywhere it's possible. It can still be deactivated by us But if there's is the data breach, then the damage is limited. But otherwise, you're right. I think the way to a better internet is and a better digital sovereignty in the EU is people to get educated around open source tools and use them themselves. However, we also should not fool ourselves that this is a reasonable solution for everyone, I think.
Very interesting question. My name is Gard Thomassen, head of the IT department, University of Oslo. Quite large thing. We are about 400 employees, and I would say there's a difference if you're a small actor or a big actor. As University of Oslo, we've been allowed to keep our competence in-house, which also has made us able to build almost everything in-house. Yes, we do have some Microsoft stuff, and that was happening a few years ago when Microsoft promised everything, and we were out of money, so we had to go there. But only 3% of our data is with Microsoft, and I would say that when you have the competence and the size, you should go for it to build it yourself. It's definitely cheaper, and you have more control of everything. I would say with the new wave of AI being what it is, or what it will be or will not be, data control is even more important. And also working with different systems, integrating. If you don't have control over data and access to your data, you're in major trouble when it comes to gaining any kind of benefit from whatever you do. And I think that's a major problem in Norway. The Norwegian government has systematically said, go cloud. Everyone is shouting for it. Every consultant, I guess half of Arendalsuka was saying, we can't solve anything without going to the cloud. And that has kind of ruined our competence. So there are like 50 people left in Norway who can really build a cloud. So it's not just to build a server or buy the server. You have to be competent. And I think that's the major take home, that we need to build that competence in Norway.
I can add something to it as well, maybe more from the commercial perspective, and something even closer. All right, really close. All right, here you go. All right, from the commercial perspective, I come from commerce, member organizations, building solutions for their customers and employees and everything else. And I think flexibility is maybe a key word here as well, and rebalancing every egg in one basket type of approach that I think has been going on for quite some time, because consolidation makes sense when you're talking about creating efficient business. But I think there is also a opportunity here that comes to looking at all your systems as an ecosystem, not only the workplace efficiency like office, etc., but everything that is closer to your employees or closer to your customers. So that means you can also have I say very often, codify your heart. That means take control of your data, basically, your data model, and it can live in many different systems. And it can also be shared in many different touch points with customers or employees. But having that as a core strategy, also think you have some more flexibility. It means you can change the different systems that you rely on, because you own the data model yourself, and you can switch it to something else. So I think part of this is also having a flexible approach to IT development, because it's not a big bang or cold turkey from day one to the next.
Thank you. I hope that was an ample question. We have another one from Torgeir.
Yeah, thanks. From your work now. So, you guys have only been talking about.
Torgeir.
Even closer.
Very close, Torgeir.
Is it not working?
Oh, you gave them.
Maybe
An off microphone.
it was my fault.
Yeah. Typical lawyers.
Even tech lawyers.
Yeah, even tech lawyers. Who can we trust these days? Oh, so okay. My name is Torgeir Waterhouse. I work in a consultancy called Otta. And you guys have mainly been talking about features and control of data and protecting your data from a vendor that should be on your side. Could you say something about the security aspects in other words, like securing from outside threat actors and outside risks? Because it's one thing to get a server up and running on your own. Another thing is to protect it in the environment it's part of when it's online connected.
I can say a few words from University of Oslo. So back in 2010, DNA sequencing machines began to pop up in Norway. And around the hospitals in Norway, we started buying these machines. And we ran out of storage and we ran out of compute power. I was there myself. And University of Oslo set out to build a service for sensitive data to secure highly private data. And we did that. And it's almost all open source today. We're working to remove the last things from VMware. Everything is in-house and it's at least compliant with everything that been thrown at us from the hospitals and so on security. And I would claim that at a big university, you have to have a clear view on what's the green data, what's the yellow data, what's the red data, and what's the black data, and take care of that. But again, back to the competence. Without the competence of the 400 employees, we'd have no chance to build this. And we see how extremely hard that is if you go to, for instance, some of the hospital IT vendors. And my claim is competence again. And it's I challenge you to try to get into our system as a white hat.
Questions? Should be working now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. George McLaren's Meteorological Institute. I often work with systems at scale. So reliability is often a concern for us, a big concern. Given that Europe at the moment is relying on US patented hardware or produced by US companies, let's say, primarily. And we have a complex energy situation. And the fact that most of the users of these cloud services to a large scale are in the big hyperscalers, Microsoft, Google. If tomorrow morning there was a sudden rush of customers in these services, European services, would they be able to handle the load? And would they be reliable?
Yes. No, I mean, this is of course very close to the history of Proton, and I thank you for this question because Proton in 2014 already was a bit victim of its success, and we learned the hard way how to scale infrastructure. I think today we're more prepared, but you know, like in an apocalyptic scenario, I cannot guarantee you that we would be able to accommodate all customers, but we have pretty good confidence. And again, I will go back to what Gard was saying. Is I think we have invested most, if not all, of our resource in getting the proper expertise today, and we are in a position where we are lucky to be able to do so. We had to bring a couple people from the US, but today we have in Europe, in our organization, the capacity, we believe, to address these type of things. And I think that's what we need to try to have on a more, you know, on European level, basically as a country, and it's so as a region, and it's too much still in this type of expertise find itself too much attracted to the US still, because of course, you know, big tech pays very well and you have excellent condition. So the question is how do we bring the people to have this expertise? I think we have it at Proton, but you know, you can just get my word on it. That's all. If you,
I can also.
Very close. Keep it close.
Hello. Yeah. I don't think you have to worry about the infrastructure in Europe because it's Danish, Swedish, Norwegian companies that dig down most of the fiber in Europe, so they don't have better internet connections or fiber in Amazon Web Services or in Holland or in Ireland where Microsoft does than if you choose an
a hosting company here in Denmark or Sweden or Norway or Finland. And there are very, very big hosting providers like Hestner also in Germany that are really, really big. So you will not need more. They have enough space for you to host everything. Or you could install the servers yourself.
We have a question down there. Please say your name and where you're from.
It's on? Yeah. My name is Johanna. I work in the police, and I'm hearing a lot about, so I'm glad you brought up scalability. Say you had an influx of customers, and all of these customers have a lot of storage. Obviously, I think I'm an outlier with where I come from and the amount of data we have. I don't think most companies would have that amount, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about the environmental impacts of this, because as we can see in the States, they're obviously having to build a lot more data centers. It's affecting their citizens with their quality of water or the amount of energy they need. And we see a lot of data centers that need significant amount of cooling and the resources that that requires. And then obviously in the EU and particularly Norway, we have very strict environmental regulations. Do you have any thoughts on this aspect and potentially the consequences of having to have more data power?
I'm working with open source, and there's a technology called HoloChain. It's actually peer-to-peer, so it means that we will use each other's storage on our phones, computers, everywhere. So this is a technology I think that I like a lot, but it means again that we have to start all over. All IT systems have to be rebuilt. It has to be developed in another way. So
I think this is a quite interesting question. When it comes to data storage, it's quite a little cost compared to compute. And also we should consider what kind of data we have, because being a hosting partner of TikTok or Facebook or whatever, you host crap. Basically, you host crap, and fair amount of it is produced to brainwash the Western world. And that's a major environmental impact. But if you're supposed to read a paper of 200 pages, most likely Notebook LM from Google will read it for you and summarize it using less power if you are supposed to read it yourself on the screen, on an electronic device. So this is an extremely hard question. But if you go to Narvik now and the big newspaper thing about 100,000 GPUs being set up there by Nscale, OpenStack, OpenAI and Aker, that's a very interesting question because the US has run out of power. They're using small modular reactors to fix things, but then basically they're out of power. And then they look for clean power, and the best place is Northern Norway. And then my big question is, where is that Iranian guy who was in Norway and setting up the oil fund and telling us that don't give this all to rich people? I don't think there's anyone up in the Narvik area or in the government saying that you're not supposed to come here and set up 100,000 GPUs without the Norwegian state getting some benefit other than maybe a little bit better roads and things like this. So I think we should be very, very aware of this. But then it's important to use IT to solve important questions, but not for cat movies.
Hi, Moritz from Datanova here in Oslo. My question is a bit more related to, let's say, we're a company that deals also with development themselves. So we have capacity for things and we develop things. But one question I also have, the interconnection with Americans or Chinese or others is not only on the hardware level that we talked about now, it's not only on the application level, but it's also on, let's say, a deeper level, all the libraries, code base, programming languages. And I would even say including open source, which is contributed to also by Google and other firms. I see the point that open source means that you spread the knowledge, that you have access to things, but how would you evaluate the risk regarding this? Because this is also a dependency that is not so easy to control. What would you say to that?
For me, the communities behind open source are so big. So every time that there are some miscellaneous or viruses or built differently, then it will be bug fixed much faster than proprietary solutions. If that was the answer to your question.
And in your most secure systems, you should put in a little delay. So maybe not update everything the first day some new package is out. That's a very nice thing to do. So I totally agree that the bugs are being picked up, and at least you can see the code. There are several places where backdoors, etc., has been found, but no one has ever seen the code except from that company who built it.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, sure.
They're not at Humanities-forbund. I'm just pointing out that the question is more about what do we do when GitHub gets cut out and every open source project is cut out for European users because the Americans don't want to share anymore. A lot of open source projects are hosted there, and what do we do then?
Very good question. Thomas, this is up your, yeah. You're the GitHub guy.
I was not so fond about Microsoft. That's true. But I think that if it happens, there are so many people who has backup of all the systems that it would be easily to get up running pretty fast. The development of the community behind it are so big, so they could easily set up just on their own homepages and publish the code there. And in most of the people on GitHub, when they also have their own homepages where you log in and then you can download from there also. So I think it's probably not. So you can get it up pretty fast, I think. Again.
Yeah, this distribution, I guess, is key. I have a question for Red Puddle Impro, which is you. And it struck me when you spoke how good it must be to have some psychology in your baggage to do all these transitions. But this is a more hard question about the money. It's a question in two parts. How much does it cost, kind of, to do a transition, and the running cost? Will you save on doing a transition, and how long does it take?
It's twofold. When it comes to how long it takes, it really depends on the complexity. But we've done on smaller projects, so maybe where we replace the video meeting part and the chat part, we can do that in about. We've seen very good migration projects with that time span. If we're talking about a full, a full scale with all the different apps, for instance, a Microsoft 365 replacement, then we're talking on the longer end of the spectrum, or probably 11 months to be complete with the go live project. And obviously after that, there's a work to be done with change management, trying to get your organization to really learn, really adopt it. And that you can do on your own, or you can do it with our support. When it comes to costs, if we're talking about license, when it comes to costs, also depending on how complex it is, but if we're talking on the presentation that I did now with the SaaS solution of Nextcloud with all of its glory, then we're talking about 250 crowns per user, which is not an outrageous cost considering the prices of Google and Microsoft and Zoom for the enterprise kronas per user per month. And then for the actual project, it really will depend on how many integrations you're looking at, how long you want our support. We were talking a lot about SaaS versus on-premise. A lot of what we do is on-premise because we work a lot with government. And then obviously they want us to train their own IT department in how to be able to manage these solutions, and then we leave them. And so it will really depend on what the needs of the organization are when it comes to the project. But when it comes to the SaaS solution, 250 kronas is what we will usually be around. Did you feel like that was a good answer?
I think it's an impossible question, so I think you managed very well. Other questions, anyone?
Hi, I am Morten from Webstep, and we are currently stuck on a American SaaS solution on a CRM, and our customers, as well as ourselves, are wondering, is there still any point in moving the data residency from the same company from US to EU in light of recent events?
I'd like to ask you if moving it to the EU means that you will move it to a hosting provider that is compliant with GDPR, or will it be one of these data centers that are still running on Azure?
Moving them to the EU, that has been, the basic trick to go around the ability for the Americans to get access to our data.
This is why I asked, because they will still have that, they will still own your data as long as it's a proprietary solution, that it's under the control of the American government. They will still own your data, even if you choose to move your data to a different hosting provider. So there it really depends on who the hosting provider is. But maybe looking at some alternatives. I know you were talking about CRM solutions.
Yeah, this is actually where there are so many CRM solutions. Sugar CRM, I cannot even remember some of them in head. Odoo has some, a lot of different, but it depends on the level. But I would probably, as I tried to explain, go into GitHub, which is not down, hopefully, and then browse different CRM solutions that are there, and then see what it can compare to the one you're using now, and then start maybe the process of migrating to that open source system. And I think you would get surprised of how big some of these CRM solutions actually are. And also, it's again, you need to think, what are the clients, what do they need? Do they need it to maybe be integrated with their homepage, their ERP system, a ticket system, or something like that? So you need to develop your thoughts on your business in that case, I would say.
It's a very good question, a very practical one. Many are facing, and in the days we were only worried about compliance. That would be a natural move, while today it's the operational risk, which is the big change. Other questions, please? Anyone? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Kian Spongsen, security architect at Dependable, and I also advise clients quite a bit on these matters. And I think that the why part, which was in the introduction there, is really important. Like, why are you concerned about this? Because, as you mentioned, GDPR, I think that if your data has ever been in another country and under another jurisdiction, you can just assume that data has been lost. You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube, right? That's so you just basically have to apologize to those people for all of those risk assessments that you did with the lawyers and technologists, and you decided that, well, we don't actually have any control over this data, but we'll do it anyway, because that's what we've been doing for quite some years. But for the rest of your systems, I think that the availability is a really important part here. What I said is that use the same criteria as used for business impact assessments and the criticality of your services. See which services are really critical to your organization. And then a couple of the things you have to assess is the urgency. How quickly can you lose this? Because a SaaS service will just potentially disappear overnight, either if some other country decides to cut the cord, or if you have to suddenly migrate out of it. So it can happen very quickly. Then the last part is the data portability or your dependency on the service. So can you actually move to somewhere else? And I think that a lot of the services here, I think that SaaS services, moving your Office documents into something else, that's going to work. But moving your developers out of GitHub and out of Azure DevOps and all that stuff, and also trying to get a full supply chain assessment of all the different parts in that chain, that's going to be really challenging. But I think that for SaaS services, yes, that's basically putting a lot of money and effort into building competing services. And we heard some ideas about this, and I think that's just a question of scaling it, really. It was more of a comment than a question.
And comments are welcome too. We're approaching time. Any last questions before I'll take the new faces first, especially when it's a lady.
Thank you. My name is, I'm having the same, it's on, okay. I'm Sarah, I'm from Stray Dog Productions. We're a tiny documentary production company. We have a lot of sensitive data, obviously working in places where this has already happened. And it feels almost, are we too late? It's 11 months, so you know how it sounds like a long time to transfer. I wish more people had been thinking like University of Oslo. Also particularly because we have to send our data to the Norwegian government when we apply for funding, and we don't know how secure their systems are. And it seems like everyone is using the same American software that we're trying to get out of. So that's the other part. I'm thinking it's one thing what we're doing for ourselves, but how that interacts with all of our partners who aren't necessarily secure.
I totally agree. But I think like a lot of these cases we have here are edge cases or just the reality. And I think it just shows where we are over the last 20 years. We have really made a decision of not being stubborn. But if we are to continue digging that hole, we will never get out of it, right? And I think change comes in many ways. So maybe by starting and then setting the requirements for the next partner, you can move another stone or another person or a company. And I think I'm using Proton myself. I'm testing different stuff, but I'm not, hardcore technical. And for me, open source was, the hardcore technical persons. It is European, and in my work advising on commerce, there are so many alternatives, so many good alternatives on the SaaS level, and you don't have to do it all at once. You need to make, one active choice at a time, and that could be going for Proton as an example, or it could be going to Linpro and ask for advice on how to securely share data with partners. So I think this strategy of assessing your data and also assessing, creating a roadmap on that change journey, it can really be helpful, and it would be awesome if we could even share among us even more.
Wonderful. The last question goes to you.
I'm Håvard from Microsoft, and so a question to the guys who are hosting, and it's a question for reflection. So I'm thinking, which government or which country do you trust with your data? Where would you want to put your data? Because EU is a conglomeration of different countries. So who is the best country? And I really think we're moving towards what we see with taxes, like tax havens. Will there be data havens, like countries we have no regulations with everything that's, well, if that's good or bad, that's a different discussion. But do you think we're moving towards that? Because where should we put our data if we can't trust anyone?
I can start a little bit. As a big organization, I'm back to our own basement and a couple of different locations within Norway. Why go anywhere else? And as long as we can buy hardware, I think that's might become an issue. All the hyperscalers are making their own hardware. Might we have the European risk or European chip initiative? And then you had another thing there when on. Fall out my head. Sorry.
Should I?
You can speak first if you want.
It's interesting because I had the first real open source hosting company back in 2000. And when you ask about that, maybe we're only 6 million idiots in Denmark, but we have more ISPs in Denmark than they have in Germany or Hamburg alone. So I would say that a lot of these small countries, their infrastructure, the internet infrastructure is insane. The fiber connections to everything, all households are insane. But, and I also know by heart, but you should probably know that also, if you are hosting things in Microsoft on the island out there what are the fiber connections to and forth island and the backup to Holland? If I was you, do you also take backup then back in the States somehow? Or where do you do? And why did you choose these things? Because I would like to answer the question back. Because I would choose other countries if I was going to place hosting centers of Wildholms. Not Holland is okay, but Ireland. Why? It's an island. So
I can answer it.
Yeah, I would just like to address that and say that there needs to be variety. This is why we're really trying to get more and more suppliers to be on the market. Because if, I'm Portuguese, but I live in Sweden. If something were to happen to Swedish politics, in 20 years, our clients could pack up their data and move to, a supplier in Italy, if that's looking better. I think what needs to exist is variety so that we don't have to feel like it's either the supplier or nothing. So I think that's really the key, just having more and more suppliers that can same hosting and the same service.
And these wonderful discussions will need.
Just a quick comment on Ireland. This is it'll make it really short.
Really nice, those Irish, aren't they?
No,
also Holland, because Holland could be underwater soon.
Yeah, no, I'll just answer it quickly, the Ireland one. So Ireland is actually there's a tax haven, of course, and it is a mix of the tragedy of the commons. So everyone chooses Ireland, therefore everyone goes to Ireland. And also Ireland is a funny fact. It's the country in Europe with the most stable, worst temperature you can get. So it's really cheap in terms of cooling. So yeah.
Sounds like Northern Norway. Thank you so much for